All right, Via. So the questions that we are posing before we go into our debate this evening: criticism of Justice Reddy, justified or warranted or unwarranted? Fear of chilling effect on judges exaggerated? Is such criticism part and parcel of politics? Because if now there is a former judge stepping into the realms of politics, because even the vice presidential election isn't devoid of that, is this part and parcel of it all? Let's take all these questions to our panelists this evening. Joining me, Mr. Hitesh Jain, member, 23rd Law Commission of India; Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate and Supreme Court. I want to immediately cut across first to Mr. Hitesh Jain. Mr. Hitesh Jain, the fact is today there are many former Supreme Court judges who've signed a copy which clearly seems to suggest that, and I'll just quote the text which has been signed by many former Supreme Court judges. The statement of the Union Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, publicly misinterpreting the judgment of the Supreme Court in the Salwa Judum case is unfortunate. The judgment nowhere supported or expressed support for Naxalism or its ideology. While the campaign of the office of the Vice President of India may be ideological, it can be conducted civilly and with dignity. Criticizing the so-called ideology of either candidates should be eschewed. Prejudicial misinterpretation of a judgment of the Supreme Court by a high political functionary is likely to have a chilling effect. Hitesh Jain. These are very strong words worded by nobody else but by former judges of the top court of the country, the Supreme Court.
Well, I am not surprised by the statement issued by the former judges, because they have been a part of many of the statements that have come in last 5 years. Unfortunately, what is worrisome is that when they speak about judicial independence, chilling effects, judicial independence is not weakened by any political debate. It is weakened when the former judges of the court, they are behaving as a political activist. Well, if you will look at the statement of Justice Reddy also, I'm glad he said that, they're trying to, Mr. Amit Shah is trying to build the narrative, so be it, and I'm ready to face. But unfortunately, these judges, the former judges have, I think, taken too far. This is a political campaign. There is an election. And once you are contesting the election, you must have broad shoulders and you should be ready to face the criticism. Secondly, as far as the judgment is concerned, this is not the first judgment which has been criticized. The same activists have criticized the judgments of the Supreme Court, whether it is Ram Mandir or whether it is 370, they have criticized in the past. So does that mean to say that when you are criticizing the judgment of the Supreme Court, or when the judge is sitting on the bench and you are criticizing the judgment, it will have a chilling effect?
But Mr. Judge, criticizing a judgment is one thing. Would you reckon criticizing a judgment is one thing, or attacking a judge for a particular ideology or a perceived ideology is another?
Well, I don't think there was any attack on the judge personally. It was attack on the Salwa Judum. And there a statement of Home Minister was very clear that had that judgment would not have been there, Naxalism was on its last legs, and there would not have been any Naxalism.
Okay.
And according to me, and one more thing, Preeti, he is now a political candidate. He is no longer a sitting judge.
Okay.
And once you have entered, and I want to make one more thing. I want to remind these judges, the same lot of people who have written the letter, where were they when Justice Gogoi's judgment were criticized when he became a Rajya Sabha MP? Where were they when Justice Abhijit Gangopadhyay became the judgment when he became the MP elected by the citizens of West Bengal? They were ready to criticize, oh, you were passing the judgment that was facing the judgment, government and all. Is that not, is that not an hypocrisy? Idea is that I can understand if fairly you are making a criticism, and by that logic, the logic they are giving is that you should not criticize the judgments of the court. It will have a chilling effect. By that logic, if a person is sitting on the bench, then so long as the judge is on the bench, one should not criticize the judgment. It will have the chilling effect. So someone should say, are we not for a free speech, fair criticism? What about that?
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle back to you. And the question that I will ask you is, in your legal opinion, because if you look at the finer points of the judgment way back in 2011, on what was challenged was the legality of Salwa Judum and what the judgment was. But before that, I want to bring in Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate, Supreme Court. Sanjay Hegde, if it gets too hot in the kitchen, you should leave. The fact is, ultimately, this comes in the realms of politics. He's a candidate of the opposition parties, and it's par for the course.
Well, the point is that when you get into politics, you can expect criticism of various things. But politics also doesn't give you a license to say anything. The normal law is that you can attack a judgment, but you cannot attack the judge personally. Here, the attack on the judgment is that the judgment promotes Naxalism, that we would have got rid of the Naxals but for this judgment. That is crossing a line. Now, the other thing I heard Mr. Jain say was that, look, he's no more a judge, he's a politician. What is the impact when judgments of the court are criticized as having effects by a senior constitutional functionary, a senior minister? It sends a message that if your judgment is not liked, no matter how many years after your retirement, we will still come after you, or we will still attribute motives to you. That is the chilling effect that the statement speaks of. Just to take you back into history, President Eisenhower, for instance, did not like the desegregation judgment, where white kids and African American kids had to go to the same school. But he said, once it's a judgment of the Supreme Court, and
but Mr.
I am
Hegde,
president, I have to honor it.
Mr. Jain, but on what is being contended, that the Home Minister never said that he was trying to promote the Maoist ideology or Naxalism. He, in hindsight, says that particular judgment at that point of time, if had not disbanded the Salwa Judum, could have led to the end of Naxalism much earlier than now.
Well, I think he made a statement. I mean,
can I get Mr. Hegde to respond to it? I'll come to you, Mr. Jain. Just a minute. Go ahead, Mr. Hegde.
See, these are the ifs and buts. And why was it necessary for the Home Minister to make it at this particular stage when the author of the judgment was contesting for political office? Justice Reddy also gave the judgment on black money, for instance. And on the black money thing, the Home Minister and his party went to town promising Achhe Din and telling people that lots of money would come into their bank accounts. Now, you cannot take a judge's one judgment out of context just because he is contending for political office against your preferred candidate.
Okay, I want to bring in Mr. Jain into this conversation, because if you're going to hark back to history if one is going to read that the Home Minister tried to misconstrue something, in effect, to say that Justice Reddy, somewhere down the line, weakened India's fight against Naxalism. Mr. Jain, the case of Nandini Sundar versus State of Chhattisgarh, 2011, it dealt only and purely, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, with the legality of the Salwa Judum, which at that point of time was a state-sponsored militia designed primarily to counter Naxalite insurgency. The petitioner then, and that's important, had challenged only the legality of the Salwa Judum, an anti-Naxalite militia there. It was alleged that the militia engaged in unlawful activities such as forced displacement, torture, and killings, and the movement violated fundamental rights under the Indian Constitution. The Supreme Court bench, it wasn't Justice Reddy alone, had ruled declaring Salwa Judum unconstitutional, reaffirming that the state cannot sanction extrajudicial violence and must respect the rule of law. When you look at that ruling, Mr. Jain, as an astute lawyer like yourself, would you reckon that this was actually a good ruling in that time?
Well, Preeti, we are not debating today whether Salwa Judum is a good ruling or a bad ruling. What we are debating today is few former judges of the court have turned up as a political activist, and they are saying, oh, heaven will fall if you will criticize when a person has become
not really, sir. We are also debating
a candidate. No,
fair point, Mr. Jain. We are
you
also
cannot criticize the judge because
Mr. Jain,
merely because he's a candidate, because it will have a chilling effect.
Fair
Today,
point,
it is
sir.
that
Fair point, sir.
statement
That's
they are
one
defending.
part of the debate.
According to
That's
me,
one
they
part
should,
of the
this is a
debate
very
which we addressed.
See, in my view,
Mr. Jain,
this
that's
is a
one part of the
selective
debate which we addressed earlier on. There is also a part which clearly, in hindsight, views, and this, I'm not making anything up because it just views that the judgment
Fair
by
enough.
Justice
So,
Reddy
Preeti,
at the
my
time
view is that
led to
in my respectful opinion, that was a bad judgment because it was a Salwa Judum is a policy and the Supreme Court, and there is a lot of debate over there as to whether the court should interfere in the matters of policy. So that is my view on that. I don't consider this judgment is a correct judgment, and I agree with Mr. Shah that at that time it was a thought after policy, and the court should be very careful when they are entering into the domain of the policy. Yes, they have a right to decide. They can state the law, but to interfere in the policy, it's like same thing tomorrow. Suppose there have been delays in the courts. So tomorrow we have been talking about. I mean, like I'm the member of the Law Commission. The first Law Commission was dealing with the issues of delay. The 23rd Law Commission, after 70 years, is also deciding about the issues of delays. And suppose tomorrow the politicians will say that we will start delivering the judgment. Can you enter into the domain of the judiciary? Can you decide the policy for the judges? Now, nothing doing, you will decide within 3 days or 30 days or like this. So it is a question of policies. One can have a view. But I am on the larger issue. I think the judiciary has a broad shoulders. I think Justice Reddy also has a broad shoulders. But unfortunately, what I want to point out, all these signatories to the letters, they are compulsive contrarians. You have seen their track record in 5 years. They are so picky. Every 6 months, they should declare themselves as a political activist and don't call themselves as the former judges of the.
I'm going to bring in, your counterpart, Mr. Hegre, in this debate. But at that point of time, that judgment clearly, was a conflict of power when it came down to how do you set boundaries of state power? It's something which is not new when it comes down to the judiciary. That's all I'm saying. I want to bring in Justice Hegre. Justice Hegre, do you concur with what Mr. Jain said?
I'm not a judge.
Mr. Hegre, go ahead.
See, what did the judgment hold? The judgment said you can't create any Tom, Dick and Harry into a police officer authorized to do police functions, which includes violence on behalf of the state. What was the Salwa Judum? The Salwa Judum was a set of people who were entirely outside the purview of law, as it were. They were not appointed regularly, and they were given a blank check. You can't have a vigilante organization doing your police functions. Tomorrow, say some random Sena or some random Dal starts policing maybe interfaith marriages, for instance. Can you have that?
But this wasn't. No. But Mr. Hegre, this wasn't a random Sena. This was clearly the Chhattisgarh government supported this.
Supporting a Sena, a Salwa Judum was a private organization which was given special
the local tribals, yes.
Yes. So that was why the court struck it down. It is not as a matter of policy. It is as a matter of constitutional law that it was struck down. Now, nobody ever debated Salwa Judum rightness, wrongness. 16 other judges have weighed in on that and have said that we are not going to change the judgment. They, as recently as, are you ascribing motives to the entire 16 judges just because one of them happens to now be candidate?
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Right. I appreciate it.
Simple message. Respect judgments. And do not disrespect individual judges for your political motives.
All right, I'm going to just let it rest. I appreciate you heard both sides of that story.